Welcome. You're watching Buckingham Business Review. I'm your host, Bernie Wolford. Our video magazine is about the intersection of people, strategy, and tactics. And we are in our fourth segment with a fascinating guest. At least I am learning a lot about her subject matter, which is franchising, Leslie Kuban. Leslie, some of the details and the nitty-gritty of franchising and the business of being in the franchise business. Let's start with something like capitalizing the business. If I am not well-heeled enough to write the first big check, are there ways I can still get into it that allow me to get into a franchise without having to come up with a big lump sum on the front end?
Well, the short answer is it depends on what big lump sum is. Okay. I think when a lot of people think about franchising, they do think about the big stuff, the big food.
$250,000 McDonald's franchise.
Right, because that's what we see. And some of those franchises, if they are larger in that way and they know that candidates are going to have some kind of financing relationship, franchises don't really get into the business of providing financing, but they may have lending relationships, a bank that does SBA lending that is very familiar with their brand and very comfortable with it. The candidate still has to qualify for it. Right. And in this environment, that means stellar credit, no issues on when their financial history. Traditional financing through SBA loans, the good news is it's better today than it was last year, yes. But it is still challenging. But most franchises, when you look at the pie of opportunities, the bulk of them, the total investment is under $250,000, and even larger. There's probably a third of them can be fully capitalized for between $75,000 and $100,000. Okay. So they're not these large investments. So a lot of people are self-funding, whether it be through their own liquidity. A very popular funding strategy, I'd say at least half of the clients that I work with are using. It's called a 401k rollover or a self-directed retirement plan.
I was going to ask if I can dip into some of the IRA type.
You have to work with specialists, and you can't just pull money out of your IRA. You have to work with a strategist that really understands how this works. And ultimately what it is, it's a tax-free, debt-free, penalty-free way to move assets move money that is in one asset, which is your 401k, into your own business. And but there's home equity lines of credit, there's equipment leasing. I mean, usually people are kind of packaging together from 2 or 3 mechanisms of coming up with the investment.
Bottom line, if I hear a number and it sounds a little big, I shouldn't put on the brakes at that point. There may be ways I can do some financing to reduce that initial check. Okay. Let's very quickly segue into some perhaps unique regulatory issues surrounding franchising. Obviously, I own the business, but then again, I don't. I can be creative, but up to a certain point. What are some of the nuances of regulatory issues surrounding franchising?
What's good to know is that franchising is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and it is the most regulated form of business opportunity. All franchises are business opportunities, but not all business opportunities are franchises. So in 1979, Congress regulated franchising. It's governed by the FTC. So there's a lot of disclosure legislation in place. If I'm a franchisor and I'm offering a franchise opportunity, I have to provide any franchise candidate with a disclosure document. It's called an FDD.
Those
franchise.
Are the big 200-page thick things I have seen.
And it houses a lot of information, audited financial statements of the franchise company that have to be updated annually. If there's been any litigation or bankruptcy issues, I mean, all of those types of things have to be disclosed.
So I'm going to know, unless they're being dishonest and hiding something, I'm going to know everything, very transparent, above board, that I can find out about that opportunity.
It's a lot, but it's not the only data point. You can never make a qualified yes or no decision to any franchise by just the disclosure document. It's a tool in the due diligence process, but it's not the totality of the due diligence process.
Okay. A very unfair question for you, given our limited time remaining. Let's flip the coin entirely. If I'm involved in a business, maybe something I've created and founded, and I think it can be replicable and maybe franchise my own business, what are some of the, litmus tests I should put against that before perhaps giving you a call?
Somebody else has to be able to run it successfully other than you. that's one of the
that's a big one, I think.
That's a big one. And when we're looking for proof of concept in a organization that we're considering helping franchise, that's an area that I'm spending more time in. It's a very exciting area. Yeah. But you look for, does someone who doesn't come from that industry, is your model fine-tuned enough and is it simple enough that someone who is a good business person but doesn't come from your industry, doesn't have contacts or doesn't have knowledge that is already specific within your industry, can they walk in and in a reasonable period of time duplicate what you have created?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, Leslie, I know you're very busy. I know you're extremely busy and your business is growing and you're adding staff you shared with us. What is the best way for our audience to connect with you if they have a question or if they want to consider franchising?
Right. Yep. Please give me a call. My phone number is 770-579-3726. And you can find me online at FranNet.com, FRANNET.com.
Thank you again, Leslie. I've learned a lot about franchising, and I know our audience has. So thank you again for being with us on Buckingham Business Review. This is Bernie Wolford, your host, and I hope you will join us again for another very exciting and interesting guest in the not too distant future. So long for now.